The Honda Ridgeline is like the minivan of pickup trucks. It's the practical, ideal solution that really should be at the top of the list for most people shopping for a truck, but they often look away due to their pride or the stigma that this isn't a real pickup truck because it's a unibody. Well, Honda's been standing behind this unibody truck approach for 20 years now, and back in 2017 with this platform, they solved the one problem that made it painfully obvious that the Ridgeline was no traditional pickup truck, and it's this right angle right here. The old Ridgeline had a sloped bed that covered the structural sail pillars that were needed to make the chassis more rigid because, unlike crossovers, there's no D-pillars or roof in the back, which is sort of used to tie the whole chassis together. It's kind of like how convertibles aren't as structurally sound as their coupe or sedan counterparts. The Chevy Avalanche was a unibody and it had a very obvious sail pillar in the back. The new Santa Cruz also uses them, and even the Cybertruck has them. The only trucks today that don't have them are the Maverick and the Ridgeline, and you know, the Ridgeline does it with a bed that's over 5 feet long, a payload of over 1,500 pounds, and a towing capacity of 5,000 pounds, which honestly is probably limited by the V6 that's going on nearly 30 years now. But hey, at least you get a V6 with VTEC no less. So what's the point of a unibody truck over a traditional body-on-frame pickup truck? Well, for starters, there's safety because this happens to be the only pickup truck in its class that gets an overall 5-star crash safety rating, but more importantly, it's a much better use of space, and it allows you to do things like this. I mean, not the tailgate, which is awesome by the way, it gives you much better access to the inside of the bed, but it allows you to add things like this, an in-bed trunk, which as you can see is massive, and there's even a drain plug in here that allows you to wash your muddy gear or even turn it into a cooler if you want. This efficient use of space also makes it into the cabin because when you get into the Ridgeline, it's pretty easy to get in here. You kind of just step into it. It doesn't feel like you're climbing into your pickup truck, and you don't need any running boards, and this doesn't have any sacrifice on ground clearance. And of course, inside you're going to have the most spacious cabin in its class, and here in the back seats you're going to find the most leg room of any mid-size pickup truck. You're going to find at least 3 more inches of leg room back here than you would in, say, a Tacoma or a Frontier. You'll also notice that I've got plenty of headroom, and my legs are a little bit closer to the seat bottom than you would find in, say, a Frontier, or my legs were kind of up like this, like I was in the 3rd row of a crossover. Not only do the back seats have this sort of stadium style seating where they fold up, giving you a ton of space to store things, but you also get this elevated look where you're looking above the passengers in front of you, giving you a clear view outside the windshield, which only adds to the rear passenger experience. And of course, finally, a unibody is going to give you a nicer ride with better handling, which I'll talk more about later. For 2024, Honda has again refreshed the Ridgeline despite its 8-year-old design, and with this new redesign you get an updated grille, an updated infotainment system, and a tailgate with the word Ridgeline stamped into the back of it, which I think is pretty cool because I think the Ridgeline is a cool name for a truck, and I've always thought that it needed a stronger identity on the road. What's also new is Honda's Trail Sport trim finally making its way to the Ridgeline, and with it you get some general grabber all-terrain tires and a suspension that's better tuned for off-roading. The Trail Sport is actually a very popular trim with the Passport, making up roughly 1/3 of the Passport sales, so it's a nice addition for the Ridgeline. However, like the Passport and unlike the Pilot, you don't get a lift with the Ridgeline Trail Sport, which is a bit unfortunate. Now, if you were hoping that this would be a 1-year refresh with a complete redesign for 2025, you're out of luck because the 2025 models are already listed for sale on Honda's website. And as disappointing as that might seem, it's probably a good thing because it's helping to keep the prices down for the Ridgeline, because unlike the other trucks that have seen massive price hikes over the past few years, the Ridgeline has stayed relatively stable. Historically, the Ridgeline was always this relatively very expensive pickup truck, and it still is today, but it's a lot more competitive than it was just a few years ago. I used to sell these pickup trucks, and it was a really tough sell against something like a Tacoma, which was a lot cheaper and a lot more more capable. But today, you're going to find yourself spending more money on a Tacoma, which is not as well equipped. Today, an SR5 Tacoma with 4-wheel drive and a double cab is going to cost you about the same as a Ridgeline RTL, and that's before you get basic features like heated seats. In 2023, that same equipped Tacoma would only cost you somewhere in the mid-30,000 range, which is why the Ridgeline is just so much more competitive thanks to its price being stable. In fact, you used to be able to get a Tacoma TRD Pro for just a little bit more than a Ridgeline Black Edition, but now that same trim costs over $63,000 for a Tacoma. Now, if you're dead set on getting a next generation Ridgeline, well, Honda did recently release a teaser for the new Passport, but it's not going to be unveiled until early 2025. And seeing now that the Ridgeline is more closely following the Passport than the Pilot, I would be on the lookout for a new Ridgeline to be sort of announced at least later next year. However, Honda did make some notable upgrades to the interior. The infotainment system is now bigger, faster, and it comes standard on all trims now. The instrument cluster is also improved with a half-digital display, which is welcome but somewhat frustrating. They moved the analog tachometer from the right and implemented it into the digital display and replaced that analog tachometer with a speedometer, which really doesn't make much sense because there's a very clear digital readout of your speed in the middle of the screen. This could have been much better implemented if it was just an all-digital display. Also gone are the individual armrests on the seats, and instead you get a large single armrest with a nice large storage area in the middle. The Trail Sport also comes with some leather seats with some orange stitching on it, as well as an orange Trail Sport badge embroidered into it. You'll also find some all-weather mats with some orange Trail Sport branding on it, as well as some orange ambient lighting within the cabin, which I don't know how I feel about, if I'm honest. Kind of reminds me of an older, cheaper 2000s car, but I guess it sort of fits the look that they're going for. Unfortunately though, the dash does seem quite dated, and the sound system is very disappointing, which is made even worse by the fact that it has such a nice ride quality. It's just missing the clarity, and it doesn't really pass my personal test of being able to listen to a podcast at a lower volume while driving at freeway speeds. Alright, so here we are driving the Ridgeline, and well, this is kind of the reason why a lot of people choose to buy a Ridgeline over a traditional truck. It drives and handles really nicely. It's quiet, it's comfortable, it handles well. When you're in this thing, it's easy to forget that you're driving a pickup truck. In fact, you're kind of driving one of Honda's better riding vehicles, the Pilot, and that's kind of a good thing. Okay, that was not a good mic placement, so I'll be taking over here. Driving the Ridgeline does indeed feel a little more luxurious than another mid-sized truck, even with the all-terrain tires on the Trail Sport, and I appreciate that this is one of the last remaining mid-sized trucks that comes with a V6. It may not be as powerful as the other turbocharged inline 4s, but it thankfully doesn't sound like a 4-cylinder, and this V6 still comes with VTEC, which is a nice treat when you really give it some gas. Now, the one thing I don't like about driving the Ridgeline is the fact that you have to drive it a lot more than you'd hope for a brand new car built today. The driver assist tech in this car is stuck in 2017 and does not have Honda's latest version of Honda Sensing. Active cruise control does not work under 25 miles an hour, and lane keeping assist does not work under 40 miles an hour, and when it does work, it's quite limited and really just works best as an emergency lane departure warning system. This also means that you don't get Honda's new traffic jam assist feature that doesn't require any driver input whatsoever at low speeds, but I'm guessing the Ridgeline's older components just aren't compatible with the latest version of Honda Sensing. This is the Trail Sport model after all, so we went on a little 10-mile off-roading adventure in the mountains. Nothing crazy, but I did feel confident with the Ridgeline's all-wheel drive system, especially with the all-terrain tires. However, the limited clearance and the lack of a full-size spare was on the back of my mind as we encountered some larger rocks on the path. The Ridgeline obviously isn't made for hardcore off-roading, but I feel like with the right scale and a proper spare, and maybe also a lift, you'll be able to do more than you'd expect, and overall the Ridgeline should meet the basic off-roading needs of the vast majority of truck drivers, of course, while giving you that nice ride when you are on the road. In the end, I really appreciate Honda's commitment to making a unibody pickup truck, and with the recent introduction over the past few years of the Maverick and the Santa Cruz, I really think unibody trucks are here to stay. The Ridgeline really is the perfect solution for the vast majority of truck buyers, and it's been immune to these incredible price jumps that we've seen from other trucks, including the Maverick and the Tacoma. Today's Black Edition costs just $2,000 more than it did in 2020. That's a 5% increase over 5 years. Unfortunately, despite Honda's efforts to give it a more rugged look over the past few years, it still sort of lacks that aggressive appearance of most trucks. But if you can get over those aggressive looks, it really is a great truck. And with that, thank you so much for watching, and thank you to Honda for loaning me this Ridgeline, and I'll see you on the next one.